Hello, everybody. Most of you know me or knew me before as the CEO of Firmex, founder CEO of Firmex. It's interesting. I actually wanted to be a history teacher in my life. That was my plan. But then I decided to bail on my getting a PhD, and I was unqualified to do anything, so I got a job in sales. That was the advice I got, which I find kind of interesting because sales is a learned skill. We have, I think, bias to think of sales as something someone's a natural at. And we invested in Firmex in creating people that weren't natural salespeople into great salespeople, right? It's actually a training. They should really have a BA in sales at university because it's one of the most common and lucrative jobs you can get. But they teach, other important things like art history. No offense, I took 2 art history courses, but it doesn't usually lead to practical results. So I'm going to talk about a very tactical sort of process. I ran sales school at Firmex, and I'm going to walk through that, and then hopefully we'll have a bunch of time for questions at the end. So I'm going to go over winning in a competitive category. If you're the only product in town and you win every deal, this is not for you. But if you're competing against other players, usually it's a bake-off sometimes between 3 or 4 vendors, this is going to be relevant to you. Really what I saw as the industry standard after I got trained up, I was a sales manager at NetSuite. We had salespeople from Salesforce, from Dell, from all over, and they're all terrible. They're all horrible. They do something called the show and tell demo. And I see it over and over again. Even recently, I had someone pitching me on an investment, and they did a show and tell demo. We're going to get into the show and tell demo. And then I'm going to talk about how you really want to engage prospects, and a little bit on conversation hygiene. And then really 3 stages to the effective sales process. And there's lots of books on sales process, and this is just my version. At Firmex, we would write, average salesperson was writing 100 to 150 new orders a year. So we were ABC, always be closing. And it was a competitive industry, right? So we were generally, and most of those deals were competitive. And one of the metrics that I looked at was as you all do, conversion rate. And if I've got 10 sales reps closing 100 to 150 small transactions a year, if I could bump my closing percentage by 5%, that was material. It all went to the bottom line. And being a math guy, I go, okay, over 2 years, that adds 15, 20 million to my enterprise value, right? So I just need to improve my closing percentage by a certain amount. How do my salespeople differentiate themselves in a competitive market where the difference, all the software looks pretty similar, and the difference between from first and second is really that sales call. I would add that most of our salespeople, you wouldn't think as salespeople. They were humble, quiet, thoughtful, so very different. They weren't, anyone remember WKRP in Cincinnati and Herb Tarlick? They weren't like that. Okay. Right, so winning in a competitive category. How many times anyone give sales or, hey, we were really close, we got to the last, we came in second. Yeah, does that ever happen? We didn't come in 4th, we came in second. 2nd, 4th, 5th, doesn't matter, you lost. In fact, you probably cost you more money coming in 2nd than 5th because you spent more time on it. And that's a whole other conversation about wasted time running after prospects that are never going to buy from you, but that's a whole other. So how do you differentiate when you're in a competition with 4 or 5 people? How do you give yourself the edge so you can win that race? You're all going to be pretty close, right? So this is what this is about. So what do software companies love? They love the show and tell demo. And it's funny, I don't like technology. I fell into it by accident. I started my career in ladies' underwear. It's a whole other story. But I remember when I don't know, Chris Rasmussen or Mark, you were at the table when I first met. I signed up, I was 3 million ARR, and I signed up for PeerScale. And I remember it was like, introduce yourself. And I said, well, I don't really care if I'm selling software or teddy bears. If it makes money, I'm interested. And I remember getting a bunch of dirty looks from some of the engineer founders, right? I don't really care about technology. I rely on other people to deal with the technology. I was everything else. And one of the observations I had was software companies are in love with their software. And what you'll see, and I saw this at NetSuite, and I see this over and over again, is, hey, you got to see a demo. And they start going through their demo. And, oh, the font came off here. They love their demo because it's what we know. We don't know this customer that well. We don't know their business processes. We don't know what those people care about necessarily. We know our software. We see it all the time. It's rehearsed. It's easy to do. We had a lot of inside. Anyone here have inside sales reps? Right? Inside sales reps, it's what they know. They see that the demo, our sales reps are doing 2 demos a day. They see the software all the time. They know it's rehearsed. I can't make a mistake if I just go through the software. Right? It's well rehearsed. And there's almost a kind of like bias in the software industry that somehow software is magical. Right? And, God forbid you get the CTO to come and do a demo. He's like Gandalf, right? When you're selling to non-technical buyers who are just trying to solve a business process, this is the result. If you are actually looking at them, not doing it over, and seeing their reaction, they're sleeping through your whole demo. And we call this also known as, Mark, do you have also known as?
We call it a harbor tour.
A harbor tour?
It's over here, you see this feature, and over here.
You got it. I call it a show up and throw up. I'm sure you've heard that term before, but and you see it all the time. This is just a stat from Gong. Anyone record calls here? Use Gong or something similar, analytics? Game changer for me, game changer. They had this data, I don't know how true it is, but 85% in win rates when you do feature dumps. 85%. Okay. So how do we engage prospects in the sales process? Well, we've really got to understand what their vision is for their business. What is their job? How does it impact them? How does it impact other people in the company, right? How will it improve the performance of that company? And when your salespeople, and this is a test, and we'll get into it later, but you have to ask these questions. You got junior salespeople, they don't always ask the right questions. They don't get these answers, but you need to understand all of those things. That's what matters, not your software. If your software fits that category, great, then you got a prospect. One little sidebar here I'm going to get into, conversation hygiene. Who listens to their sales rep calls? How often? Any volunteers? How often do you listen to sales calls? Every day. Every day? Okay, I'm impressed. Do you do a lot? A lot of calls? So one of the things I notice with young people, I don't know if they still do this, maybe I'm dated by 5 years or something, but they use the word perfect a lot. Or you guys. Amazing. Any others? Awesome. What is the impact of using that language on a prospect? Your credibility goes down dramatically. It's a junior conversation. And so this is one of the things I would train in our sales school. It was like disciplined, over and over repetitive action to get rid of these words, and there's articles on it and how it, so just be aware, part of that presentation engagement, you remember the names of the people you're talking to, write them down. Make sure your sales reps are addressing them by their name, not by folks or use guys or whatever. Okay, so 3 stages of a software presentation. Now look, I know some of you have enterprise software, some of you have mid-market, transactional, will be a little different nuances to what you're doing. I think these are generally, we had pretty transactional stuff, so it was pretty fast. As you say, we're writing a lot of orders. But there's some kind of discovery and qualification. From that, you're going to have information that's going to be important to your presentation. And you're going to do an ask and show demo. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this presentation, ask and show. You never want to see a show and tell, or worse yet, a tell and show. That's even worse. Right? But ask and show, and then providing a roadmap to purchase, what I call a summary letter. And this might be old school. I see Pete nodding his head, old school, but I just did not see it. When I was at NetSuite, I had 12 sales reps, like none of them coming out of Salesforce that were doing any of this stuff. In fact, they would get a sales engineer to do the demo, which was even worse, because that was a guaranteed show up and throw up. Okay, so, this is all table stakes to you. I mentioned this before. What processes are you trying to improve? Is this, and you're really trying to qualify that prospect. I mean, I should even be spending time doing a demo and going through a process with this client. Who does this impact? What is the purchasing process? Who are the key stakeholders in the process, right? This is all, you all know this, right? This is all pretty standard, but that should be there. And I'm putting this up because it's important for later on when we get to the summary letter. And when you start the presentation, this is something I caught all the time. So they've had some kind of discovery, maybe a week before their presentation. They come up to the presentation. They just say, oh, I've got all the information I need, and they go right into the presentation. What if there's new people in the room? There's often new people in the room during the presentation than there were on the discovery call. So you've got to confirm what you discovered on the discovery call before the presentation. You said you wanted to see this. This would solve, et cetera. What do you want to take away from today's presentation? I always find new stuff leaks out right before the presentation. So they got to be agile. All right. So ask and show. Who looks at talk ratio on their sales calls? Hands up. Who doesn't look at the talk ratio? Okay, I guess we have it now. So really critical, you want your prospect talking 35 to 40% of the time. How do you do that? They're not showing you anything. They're not asking, right? You've got to have questions for that demo ahead of time. Plan the questions. A sales rep, I would train myself. You need to have, you've done your discovery call. You know the points in the presentation that they're going to answer. Even though you already know the answer, you want them talking. So you want to seed at least, I would always have half a dozen, maybe 5 or 6 questions that you would seed during your call just to engage that prospect. And I use some examples here from the virtual data room, but they're not particularly, where do your documents live today? Do you add them in a lot or in bulk? And when they tell you how they do it and what works for us, then you show. That's the ask, then the show, right? And you just go through that through the whole presentation. Ask and show, ask and show. And I know maybe it sounds kind of simple, but I can guarantee you, if you listen to enough of your sales rep sales calls, there'll be a lot of show and tell. Because what happens is this is more work. It's easier just to rehearse the demo. So they fall back into this habit of just rehearsing the demo. And that's where you got your sales management and so forth. And as a CEO, I mean, I had a sales manager, sales VP. I would just spot check. And again, a customer success calls just to say, okay, who's kind of keeping up with the discipline and who's kind of falling off. But it's a constant process. Q&A and transition vision. So you ask a question. Let's say you do your ask and show. Is this what you're looking for? Oh, they start talking among themselves. What is the most important thing to do when prospects start talking among themselves? Let them talk. Sometimes sales reps are like happy puppies. They get all excited and they want to chirp in and encourage them. You got to let them talk. This is what I call transition vision. They're thinking, oh, if we did this, we could do that, and if we did that, this would change over here, and this, and you're just making notes, right? Because this is fodder for your letter later, right? Don't interrupt transition vision. Then go on to your next ask and show. So wrapping up the presentation, confirm the problems you've solved, and would you invest whatever it is, $25,000, whatever the license fee is, to solve these problems? I just asked the question. Would it be worth it? I can't tell you, in my past experience, how many sales reps, I'll send you a quote. I don't want to talk about money, you might get upset. Send you a quote. Right? So you want to, this sort of like trial close almost. So would you invest? And then finally, steps to purchase. Okay, so when do you want to go live? Right? And every software has some kind of, or service maybe, has some kind of lead time, right? So you're like, well, you know, if you have implementation, so if you want to go live by September 1st, that means we've got to start implementing by, you know, July 30th, which means, and you kind of, is there anyone else? What has to happen between here and then, right? There's steps like, well, oh, our lawyer has to look at the license agreement. Okay, so that's got to happen. Or IT has to review security. Okay, that's got to, and the CFO has to sign off on budget. Oh, so that's got to happen, right? And so all of these steps are, if they don't have answers to any of those questions, you don't have a prospect. And I can't tell you how many times I had sales, oh, I had a great, how was the sales rep? Oh, great, they loved the demo. Well, when are they going to buy? Well, they're going to get back to me. Well, who's involved? I don't know. Right? Happens all the time. Maybe it was just my sales reps who all went on to be very successful people in, you know, VPs of sales. But I saw it all the time. And so, so steps to purchase. So this is has anyone ever seen this kind of follow-up note? Maybe you had someone trying to sell you something. Thank you for spending time with me today. Because I'm a salesperson and I know you don't like to spend time with salespeople. We are excited to partner with you. Attached is a quote. Please feel free to ask any questions. I will follow up with you in a week. Useless. Right? See that all the time. Summary letter. Right? Pleasure meeting you and your team today. And usually you have a name, you know, dear Julie or whatever it was. Here's a summary of what we discussed during the meeting. Prospect is considering the investment of X to improve business flows and save time and yet mitigate errors. This is my understanding from our discussion of the contingent steps to purchase. And there's a list of what has to happen between now and purchase. A lot of anyone here have SMB customers? Do you think they have a list like this of how to buy? They don't have a list. It's like going to the grocery store without a shopping list. So for me, anyway, I have to have a list. They don't know how to buy. You have to almost give them a list. And so it's really interesting. You send this letter out, especially if you got a cookie tracking thing through Salesforce. You'd see it get circulated all over the place. This list ends up going to the CFO. It goes all over the organization. There's a great value in sending a summary letter. How many people here have sales reps sending these kind of summary letters? 1, 2, 3. Well, that's good. That's impressive because back in the day I didn't see very many. But so key part. What does the summary letter also tell you about the sales rep? They asking questions. Right? And so many times I would go and say, okay, I got this deal. It's a big deal. For us, a big deal is like 50 grand or something. I'd be, okay, where's the summary letter? You know, it's interesting. I have an anecdote. We had, just before I left, we had a BDR. You ever here have BDR teams? We used to always, after we got a good BDR system going, we'd always promote our BDRs to AEs. And we had this one BDR. He was average. So he never got promoted, but he didn't get fired either. And he wouldn't leave. Because usually what happens is they get tired of being a BDR and they go somewhere else. Maybe they get promoted. He was hanging around for a couple of years. Finally, he had another opening spot. And I was like, you know, we should give so-and-so a chance. I mean, yeah, but he's average. Well, we should give so. But I used to help out with sales training because we were really busy. We were a very efficient company running high cash flow margins. Thanks for private equity. So I would pinch hit for sales training, and I trained him. And he was a very good student. He was very good at following a process. So anyway, I left the company shortly after that. It was after my third sale of the business. And the next year, I play ball hockey with the VP of sales. And I said to him, he said, you wouldn't believe so-and-so, he's our best sales rep this year. Best sales rep. I said, why? He's really good at following the process. And he doesn't stray from good methodology around sales. So anyway, I just talked about why we send the summary letter. I would review them. Trust me, you want to review them. They might tell you they're doing it, but you really do want to review them. You want to improve them. So, yeah, and as a final word, you can see here's where I started out in sales. This was vendor day at the Bay downtown. I won top prize. This is my first job out of Master of History studying it, for selling the most product at the Bay. I had a lot of girdles. They're high-priced items, so I beat out Playtex and Wonder Bra. Or I was Playtex. I beat out Wonder Bra and Just My Size and all of those. So, yeah, life happens when you're making other plans. But we would have sales school. How many of you have a formal, I know some of the bigger companies I'm sure do, but the smaller companies, how many of you have a formal sales training process that's weeks long? Have you ever fired anybody during that process? You failed? Okay, good. You guys are way ahead of me. So we would fire people who fail sales school. You could fail sales school. And a lot of the Firmex grads, in fact, one guy ended up running that I taught this stuff to, a division of SAP. And other guys are like VPs of sales, and also they have very successful careers. In fact, one fellow went on to Drata. Drata was the fastest funded unicorn back in the hype. They went from it was crazy, 0 to 20 million in their first year. And they got unicorn status. He went there. They had sales reps from, Salesforce and Google and whatever. Everyone on the team got fired for missing their targets. This guy was at double his target. And if you met him, he's the most unassuming person you'd ever meet, but he's just really good at following methodology. That's basically an important part of our process, was having this sales school. And back to what Sonia said, I didn't look for people. In fact, in some extent, I was almost looking for people without sales experience, because they brought bad habits at our role. Our sales reps are inside sales reps. And I was looking for curious people. Curious means they can learn. Drive, curiosity, and empathy were the three pieces that I looked at. So, but I could tell you, we had a product that was not very good, but we had execution on the sales operations side and the customer success side that was excellent. The product got better over time, but we had to win by other means. And you can win by other means. And it's a lot cheaper to train sales reps than write a ton of new software, as some of you know. So, all right, that's it. Any questions?
Joel?
Yeah.
One comment about your we call them plan letters.
Okay.
At PeopleSoft. Because it was a bigger company. We had an internal plan letter, which was to coordinate all the resources, like is legal ready to do negotiations, stuff like that. But we had the external plan letter, which was almost a mirror of yours.
Right.
Forecast accuracy went up after we implemented that process.
Sure.
Significantly went up.
Well, it also qualifies if they're really prospects.
Yeah. But you could not forecast something unless you had done a plan letter.
Oh, interesting.
It was a criteria for
Right.
couldn't forecast unless you had a plan letter. And when we implemented that, forecast accuracy went up.
Yeah. 100%. Yes.
How does that plan letter work in a sales cycle that's 16 months long?
Well, I guess it's a long plan. Right? If the prospect says, yeah, I think I'm going to be buying in Q3 2025, okay, let's work back from Q3 2025. What are the steps for you to buy? Right.
Do them for interim milestones along the sales cycle to get to go from step 1 to step 2?
Yeah, whatever the milestones are everyone has your slightly different sales. Our average sales cycle is 34 days, so every business is different. So what are the steps in that process? And then the key is you check on this, you review the steps with whoever your contact is. If they start missing those steps, you know that, back to your forecasting point, that this we thought was a prospect is now a suspect, as I call it, they're probably not buying. They might become what I call TAR, which is prospects you get stuck in and you never get anywhere with, right? So.
We used to call that the roadmap. I love how, I'm in violent agreement with everything you said today. When your title was how to present engaging presentations, I was like, well, this better be fucking engaging. It was great. Cool. The ask and show is like, I've never heard that line before. That's amazing. But I love how your summary letter, the end of the summary was not close, I get my order, cash my commission, and drink champagne. The end was go live, what the customer cares about.
Right.
And our sales cycle was more like 16 months. And at some point during that sales cycle, the salesperson converts from being a salesperson to being their project manager and coach to get to go live. And the close and the invoice in the middle is just a step. What's important is go live, and the salesperson gets into the posture of being, hey, I'm your consultant, I'm your project manager. We're already in a customer relationship here. That invoice thing is just a step. What's important is go live. Let's work together to plan go live, and it works. I mean, in 30 days, that's great, but it works even better in 12 to 16 months because you just
Right.
have that salesperson be a consultant and project manager that gets go live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joel, one other comment on the long sales cycle. Sometimes when you walk them through the plan letter, the answer you come back with is they should have started the process 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And then there's suddenly an urgency, and you're controlling the urgency, which ups your win rate, in my opinion.
Unless you're selling to IT or finance, they've probably never bought software before, and they don't know what that plan is, and you're providing them a service by navigating through that.
How many of your sales cycles go to no decision? Anyone want to hazard to guess? 30%? 40%? I don't know. There's some big number usually. They go to no decision. They don't buy anything. And the issue with sales productivity that I was tackling for a long time, even personally as a sales rep for a long time, was my time is $5,000 an hour. That's, if I took my annual quota divided by my work hours, it's $5,000 an hour. Am I going to spend time with this prospect? And if they're going to no decision, I failed. Worse than a loss. I failed because I didn't qualify them well enough. I mean, something might have happened. It was your champion got moved on and someone else came on. There may be some kind of disruption. But this is the other thing with the summary letter is it forces the sales reps to be disciplined because a lot of the times they want to look like they got a pipeline, right, when they don't have a great pipeline. And so, yeah. Yes?
Anything else you can share of tips around hiring non-salespeople, That's an interesting concept.
Well, Michael, you've got lots of them. Ex-accountants, domain experts. Look, I was back to what Sonia was saying, look, there's no qualifications to be a salesperson. You don't need to be a salesperson to be a salesperson. You don't need a medical degree. You don't need a legal degree. You just have to have certain attributes. You just have to be willing to learn. You have to have, my view is drive, resilience, and curiosity, and ideally empathy. You need that to, as well. But like, if they have those attributes, some of the commonalities I saw with salespeople is they're competitive, more often than not, meaning they probably play sports. Right? We all know, I mean, you kind of look at the backstory behind it, that is a common attribute. But like, you're looking for those people that are just, they have those attributes. Great thing about having a BDR team, which is a lot of work. BDRs are high maintenance, but they kind of self-select in there too, right? But yeah, I think we looked for curious people, and weirdly enough, the personalities of those people were very what we, I guess, typically think of a salesperson. Right? They tend to be thoughtful, questions, modest listeners, right? All right, anyone else? No? All right, well, thank you very much.